We're about to fire the largest weapon in the Park Service. This is not the biggest gun Park Service owns. However, it's the biggest gun that we can fire in the National Park Service. There's a weapon like that one over there, 15-inch Rodman. Instead of throwing an 18-pound iron ball, throws a 440-pound iron ball. So that's one of the larger weapons the Park Service owns, but that weapon's also 150 years old, so we can't fire it. Today's gun is an 18-pound naval artillery piece. It fires a ball weighing how much?
18 pounds.
18 pounds. A solid iron ball. We can project this 18-pound iron ball using 6 pounds of gunpowder onto targets up to 1.5 miles away. Unfortunately for you, unfortunately for us, we would have far too much fun at work if the Coast Guard allowed us to fire these 18-pound iron balls down a major shipping lane. If we hit fiberglass sailboats like that, they would completely shatter. The destructive force of a cannon like this is immense. If you send a round the size of a cantaloupe downrange at about 900 miles an hour, it's going to smash just about everything in its way. Additionally, when you fire a round like this on a flat trajectory, you can skip it across the surface of both land and sea. Did anybody know that you can skip a cannonball across water like a stone? Yeah. Well, you can. It's one of the best ways of hitting a ship at the waterline. You skip the ball right across the water. If we make hot shot, does anybody know what hot shot is? What's hot shot?
Heated ball.
Superheated cannonball. If we heat a cannonball to a point that it's red hot, you load it in a gun like this and fire it down range. Every time the ball skips across the surface of the water, the friction actually makes it hotter. It's going so fast that it doesn't have time to cool down. Instead, the friction against the water heats it up even more. So when it strikes a wooden ship, it causes that ship to burn either to the waterline or to the magazine. And what happens when that fire reaches the powder magazine?
Boom.
It blows up. That's very bad for the health of all the individuals on board. You cannot sink Fort McHenry. You cannot burn these bricks. That is why the British don't come within the range of the fort's guns when they can avoid it. How far did I say these guns can reach out? About 1.5 miles. This gun fires around on a flat trajectory. What does that mean? It goes straight out, more or less straight out. Eventually, the forces of gravity and air resistance on the surface of the ball will cause that round to slowly but surely sink back down to the earth. If you throw a baseball, it doesn't stay in orbit, it eventually lands. So our guns can only reach out 1.5 miles, and you can't really get too much more off of that 1.5 miles. The British are firing bombs and rockets from a distance of 2 miles. They're firing these bombs out of mortars. What does the trajectory look like on a mortar? It's an arc. That's a parabolic arc. Gravity is free. Gravity always works. You can test it out now or when you get home, but if you pick something up and let go, it's going to fall down. When you pop a 200-pound bomb up into the air, the gunpowder only needs to get it to the apex of that parabola. You just need enough force to get it to the top. Gravity will take care of the rest. So the British mortars, working with gravity, have a greater range than the fort's guns. The British ships can sink. The British ships can burn. The British ships are also a long way from home. So the game they play here is a careful one. They need to stay outside the range of our guns, or else they risk complete destruction. If you were to come here 200 years ago, you would have seen artillery crews drilling on just like this every single day. Today's crew is a combined crew of the United States Corps of Artillery, wearing the tall leather hats called Shakos. They're the United States Army regular garrison of this fort. They were here before the War of 1812. They were here after the War of 1812.
Load and ram down.
The other gentlemen are sailors. There were several units of sailors that were here at Fort McHenry, some of which belong to the Army, others belong to the Navy. Today, they represent the United States Chesapeake Flotilla, which was a Navy unit that operated gunboats and barges in the Chesapeake Bay in defense of Maryland and Virginia.
Handle hand spikes.
So today, they're working in concert with Army soldiers
2 battery.
in a live fire exercise. So I see some people are already covering their ears. You don't need to do that now. I'll let you know before we're loading live. And I'll tell you when the proper time to cover your ears will be. You're all loaded live? Oh, very good. All right, so the crew has run the gun into battery. They've already searched the weapon with the implement that looks like a corkscrew. That's called a worm. They ensure that there's not already powder or debris in the barrel. Our objective is to send 18 pounds of spherical iron hatred downrange at great speed. If we blow ourselves up on this battery, we're not going to be able to defend Baltimore very effectively. So it's imperative that you make sure that that gun is not already loaded. The second step is to send a sponge down the barrel, which helps extinguish any embers and cools the muzzle of the weapon. The round is then brought up. Today we are going to fire 2 pounds of black powder, which is a Class A explosive, and about 10 pounds of peat moss. Peat moss will not cause ships like that to sink. Instead, peat moss will provide resistance against gunpowder and leave us with a loud report. The weapon is then primed, aimed, and ready to be discharged. Ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to cover your ears, this will be rather loud.
Clear. Fire.
Booyah.
Never gets old.
No shit.
You can only imagine. This is just a small taste of the sight, the sound, for some of you, the ones enveloped in smoke, the scent. Warfare in the early 19th century. Imagine what it would be like if we had sent a ball down range. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. When you send an 18-pound iron cannonball down range, this gun, which weighs roughly 6,000 pounds, will recoil at a speed of about 60 miles an hour. The only thing stopping it is the breaching cable tied around the breech of the weapon. Imagine what it would sound like on the night of September 13th as these guns were firing into British ships that were trying to sneak past this peninsula. Imagine what it would sound like on board a ship firing at full broadside, being below decks, listening to all of this gunfire. As much smoke as there might be if we fired all of these guns at once. I encourage you to come back in September for our 200th anniversary of the Battle of Baltimore, where we will have a full battery, 2 field guns, our 18-pounder, and 2 24-pound naval guns, even larger than this one. I hope you've learned something today. Right now, the battery is going to be secured. All fires will be extinguished, and it will be made safe. If you should like to come up, take pictures, and ask questions. So if you just give us one moment,